Hello, welcome to Ace Gaming. Today I'm gonna look with you into which add-ons to use in your hardcore journey, especially for leveling on one hand and then questing on the other hand. And if you want to raid, maybe check out which mods to use with your raiding guild. About me, before we start, I was an officer in a hardcore raiding guild and a priest class lead, but then I took a long break and now I'm coming back to the game, so I had to reinstall all my add-ons and I thought I'd make a little guide for you guys to watch and see. And yeah, maybe if you play hardcore too, you can share which add-ons you use, what would you have made differently with this list, and I'm excited to get into it, and let's just get started. So for the first step, what do I use to install my add-ons? So if you're new, you might not have used that before, but CurseForge is really helpful. You can just download CurseForge, and then if you have the game installed, it's gonna show you like these are just games that I don't have installed and I don't own, but like it will show you the games that you have that work with CurseForge add-ons here. And you can then basically just like click on the game, or you see it here on the sidebar, click on it, and then you can download some add-ons. So let's start with the very first add-on that I would recommend. We're going to start with the category questing and open world and quality of life add-ons, so to say. So the first in that category is probably going to be Questie. Why is Questie so good? Well, let me move it a little bit over here. So Questie on one hand shows you where to hand in a certain quest, where to pick up a quest, how much XP that quest can give you, if you want to farm reputation, how much reputation it gives you. But it's also very useful in other ways, especially in hardcore, because you do want to survive and you do get a lot of quests very early. So let's say you're just level 10, but you get a quest that is maybe more for level 17, and you don't know that. You just think, oh, hey, I can do this quest, and suddenly you end up in a super dangerous zone. So to avoid something like that, if you don't know the game to like every little detail, and you still want to like enjoy it and, you know, go your own route, I would definitely recommend Questie, so that you just get a feeling of how difficult certain quests are. So that would be my first mod in the first category. Then let's go back. All right, so my second mod that I would recommend in our first top 3 category would then be Auctionator. What's Auctionator? Auctionator is a mod that basically helps you with trading and the auction house. There's a very, very useful function that you can scan the auction house for the prices, and you can also do that like a little bit regularly, and then you'll gather your own like prices inside the add-on for your server and for the market there, which will give you a better feeling of like when to sell things, when to buy things, what the market prices are. And if you maybe mainly play cell phone, you might be like, oh, but I don't really need that. It still gives you, like, it still trains you on your journey to level 60 to understand the marketplace in your server better, which then at level 60 helps you when you can actually trade at level 60, helps you then to make good deals, or while you level up you maybe get like a blue or something, you can directly see, okay, this is maybe worth 20 gold, let me just keep it to level 60 and then sell it, or oh, this is just like worth a little bit, I can just, you know, vendor it and have it that way. So for that reason, and then also the reason of having it way easier to sell on the auction house, having a safe mechanism in there that basically warns you if you buy an item that's like way overpriced. You know, sometimes there are like mean people that try to like trick you into buying maybe a basic item for, I don't know, 10 gold or whatever. So in these cases, there's just a protection in place that like warns you about certain prices. So it's a really good thing if you're, especially if you're fresh or if you're coming back and you don't know the economy of your server so well anymore, to then go on with that. Then the third one I would recommend is Guidelime. So Guidelime is an add-on that is basically giving you different options for guides that you can use while leveling up. So one of the things that a lot of people use is Rested XP, which is a guide that you have to pay for, and it's a great guide. I don't have to say anything against it. It just, a lot of people don't know that there are other options for guides, and I know a lot of people love to play with guides. I personally have to say I don't like playing with guides that much, because I feel if you don't follow the guide completely, it might get confusing, and it's not just based on like my personal preferences and playstyle. I like to be more spontaneous, and I feel it confuses me if I didn't follow the guide and then it expects me to have a quest from way before that, you know, it's just a lot. So what I like to do is I like to sometimes, like certain zones, tackle them with guide. Like Duskwood is a really nice zone to follow a guide with, because there's so many different quests and reminds you to buy certain items beforehand, stuff like that. And yeah, I just know a lot of people love guides. That's why I wanted to include it. The guide that I use is Guidelime. It's for free, and you can then basically download the base Guidelime, and then you can download different Guidelime guides. For example, I play Alliance. I usually use the Sage guide for Alliance. And yeah, that is the recommendation number 3 from the, so to say, basic add-ons category that I would suggest for everyone. Then we're gonna go into the must-have category for dungeon and group elite quest content and things like that. So this is now our category 2. And one of the first mods that I want to mention is Threat Classic 2. This is a very, very basic mod. It just gives you a little bar that then shows you the threat on the enemy that you have targeted at the moment. So why is that really useful? No matter if you're a tank, a DPS, or a healer. Let's say tank, first of all, it's very clear. As a tank, you gotta make sure that you have the threat and that it's not on your group. So it shows you if your threat is good, if you have to like pump a little bit more to get more threat, etc. As a DPS, it's very, very important in hardcore that you learn to, like, you know, temper yourself a little bit. If you're a really good player, you're gonna do big DPS, and especially at lower levels while leveling up, a lot of the tanks don't have all the utility that they have at higher levels. So it's really hard for them sometimes to keep threat. And that is why, because in hardcore, if you rip threat and it's maybe a dangerous boss that hits hard, you might die, right? So it's very important to learn to have like a look for that. And also if you play a class that has pets like the hunter, the warlock, it's really useful as well to have a threat meter, so you learn to like better gauge how your threat is compared to your pet, because usually you want your pet to tank for you. So that is one of the other many reasons. And then lastly, as a healer, it's so useful, because as a healer you're not gonna have like, your ideal setup is you play with good players and you have a DPS that knows how to watch their threat. But most likely you're gonna be, if you're pugging, you're gonna be in a group where that's not the case. So as a healer, you gotta be prepared for that. And one of the ways how you can be prepared for that is if you plan your heals ahead of time, which means you have, for example, a threat meter, and you see a rogue is about to rip threat from the tank, and you know the boss hits hard. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna start healing the rogue before the rogue actually rips the threat, so that when the rogue gets hit, your heal's gonna hit right after. That's like what you're aiming for as a healer, right? And if it doesn't happen, if the tank manages to get more threat, you can always cancel the heal. I can also at some point make a more general video about healing in hardcore if anyone is interested in that. But like in general, like that's why it's really useful for a healer as well to have like a threat meter on one hand, so that you see if you're in danger of ripping threat, which can happen if you have to heal a lot, but then also for the situation with the DPS that I just described. A mod I want to mention with that, which gives you the option to have a threat meter included, and it's a really nice mod in general as well, is Details Damage Meter. So you have a lot of different options in Details. You can watch threat, you can watch healing, you can watch DPS, and you can also watch that in detail. You can see which skills were used and when they were used, who did how much DPS, what did they do with which skills, how did the healing go, etc. So it gives you a lot of options, and it's really, really useful, especially if you play in groups, if you want to improve your own performance, because you're always going to run into people that, you know, maybe play your class a little bit differently, and you can see like, oh, they have like higher DPS than me right now. I wonder why. And then later on you can check like how is maybe their rotation a little bit different to yours, and you know, you just gather more information that like helps you improve as a player. It's super interesting to see, and I would definitely recommend getting it. I would just recommend getting this and getting Threat Classic still additionally, because once you start enjoying looking at the DPS meters, looking at the healing meters, then, you know, you're not going to have the thread of this details damage meter open, but you're going to have the healing open and you're going to have the DPS open. So you want to have an extra add-on for thread, so that the thread is still like the important thing to watch out. This is just nice to have for fun, but the thread is what you really need. Like if you rip thread, you might be dead. So watch out for your thread, guys. Then the last, or the next mod, maybe not the last, but the next mod on this is deadly boss mods. Where do we have it? Here we have it. So this mod basically has, you can also get additional add-ons on the side, but this basically provides you with important information regarding bosses in dungeons and stuff, like if you need to stun at a certain point, if there is a certain thing that needs to be dispelled. This mod kind of like helps you keep track of that. So especially if you're maybe not so used to the dungeons in Classic, or it has been a while since you did them, things like this can be super useful to, you know, make your experience a little bit smoother and easier and better prepared. And then I think the last one in the category dungeon would be Atlas Loot, which is basically a add-on that shows you which type of loot there is in which dungeon, or which loot can drop. And it helps you stick a little bit better to the etiquette in hardcore, because it's very important that you're not that person that just like needs on loot that they don't need, or you maybe need on something and then you need on a weapon that's a little bit better than the previous one, and then another weapon drops and you need on that too. You don't want to do that. So what you want to do is you want to see before you do a dungeon, what is the loot that is important for you. You want to keep that in mind, and then you want to wait for that loot, so that if that loot drops, you're gonna need for that, but that you're not just gonna randomly need on everything. I don't know if this makes sense for you, but like, I think it's very useful in that sense, and especially maybe for newer players in Classic Hardcore, just to kind of like stick to the unspoken rules, you know. But besides that, it's also just really fun and motivating to do dungeons if you can see like, oh my god, I can get this cool chest piece, or I can get that cool helmet, etc. So this is just more on the fun side of mods in my opinion, but still really cool to have. And then we're gonna go to the next category, which is a little bit more important for healers and tanks, or anyone really that really likes to do dungeons. So one of my most favorite mods, add-ons in hardcore, which would have been in the top 3 if it wouldn't have been other, like if I wouldn't have considered like making it like a more general thing. But like for me personally, this is my absolute top 3 of add-ons, and I would really recommend everyone to get it. And that's ClassicHealPrediction. This is this add-on. It's very simplistic, so it's also like, it's not intrusive at all. It literally just shows, kind of like you can see it here in the image, little green bars fill up the health bars in the raid frames, in the group frames, while you're in a group, or also while you're on your own. And that helps you see incoming heals. So everyone that has this add-on installed can see incoming heals. If you're a healer and if you're experienced in hardcore and classic, you might use VuhDo or HealBot. That has the same function, but usually your tanks or your DPS are not gonna install like a whole VuhDo or whole HealBot add-on just so they can see incoming healing. But instead, this is like, because it is so little and so minimalistic, it's like easy to have multiple people have it installed, and it will make you run so much safer, and it will especially make difficult situations so much safer, because you can directly see, like if you have, for example, a support class, let's say a druid DPS, and you can then see, okay, does the healer need help with off healing? If you're DPS and just pure DPS and there's a sticky situation, you can see if there's a heal incoming from a healer right now, or if you should pop a health pot. And obviously as a tank, it's super useful to know if a heal is incoming, how much, if your healer is struggling or not, and to not only have their mana bar, but to actually have something that you can see and gauge a little bit better with. So yeah, this is super useful. It prevents overhealing, it prevents mana waste, it lets you have a better overview of the situation, when to pot, etc. So I can really recommend getting this to everyone, literally. The next on the list is Decursive. This is more for healers and all the classes that have any type of dispel, decurse, cleanse poison, etc. So this is really useful because it basically adds a little, let's see, did I have the gallery? Yeah. It adds a tiny like thing with like Decursive, and it adds then like basically your groups as little squares, and you just right click or left click the square to like decurse them or dispel them. And it shows you also, you can like give a priority list, so you can also, if you're in a bigger group later on in raids, it's often used, you can see then like who needs decursing and who's on the priority list. For example, maybe usually it's tanks, but then there are some other situations where maybe you want to dispel the healers first, etc. So you can all manage that with that. That's like later on for raiding, where you go a little bit more into the details. But for the start, if you want to get used to it, you can just download it, and then it's just basically left click and right click to use your dispels, decurse, whatever. So it's very useful and can speed up your process a little bit. Then I also mentioned VuhDo and HealBot. So both of them are add-ons that are made for healers. And they have a lot of different functionality. I can maybe talk about them in another video in more depth, but if you're a healer and you're interested in more automation and clearer interfaces, etc., you might really like them. I know a lot of healers love them and swear they couldn't do without. I personally like to play without it. I like the feeling of, I don't know, playing a piano or something while healing. But yeah, VuhDo and HealBot, if you're a healer and that interests you, definitely worth checking out. And then the last two, on one hand for healer, also I can recommend Healer Protection. This is very simple. It gives you messages when you're low mana, so that you don't have to like write in chat each time that you need a tank to like wait a second for you to drink. So that can definitely help and make you run a little bit smoother and safer. And then the last one on my list was LossOfControlMessages. So this can be nice for DPS, but I would mainly recommend it if you're a tank or if you're a healer again, because it's more important if you're tank or if you're healer, if your character lost control. So what does it mean, lost control? If you, for example, get stunned, if you get put to sleep, etc. So in those situations, there will be an automated message that tells in your party group, asleep for 15 seconds, for example, so that your healer gets a reminder to maybe dispel the sleep on you if they can, or your group knows, if you're the tank, that they gotta be careful now because you're put asleep, or you're, you know, out of control of your character for the moment. Or if a healer gets silenced, it will tell the group that the healer is silenced, you know. So I think just knowing that already tells you a little bit of why this can be so useful. And yeah, with this, I would like to close it. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Let me know which add-ons you prefer. Is there anything that I should have mentioned but I completely forgot? If so, I'm really sorry. Let me know in the comments, please. I'm looking forward to reading them. And yeah, if you want to, I can make a part 2 as well. And see you around. Thank you so much for passing by.